Hey guys, tonight we're digging into one of the greatest, weirdest, and honestly most ridiculous art crimes in history. The time the Mona Lisa was swiped right out of the Louvre in 1911. That's right. Someone just walked into the world's most famous museum, picked up Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa, and peace out. No Mission Impossible lasers, no high-speed chase, just pure. Did anyone see where I put that priceless painting? Energy. So, before we turn this cozy story time into an international incident, go ahead and like this video and subscribe. But only if you actually enjoy this kind of chaos. And drop a comment telling me where you're listening from. Now, dim those lights, turn on a fan for that sweet white noise. Get comfy, maybe lock your doors, just in case a sneaky 1911 Italian handyman tries to take your family photos. Let's pause for a second. Have you ever wondered what it's like to be the world's most wanted art thief? Except you have no plan, no backup, and you mostly just want to hide under your bed for 2 years. Did the Louvre actually notice it was missing? Or did they just shrug and assume someone was giving it a dusting? How do you even hide a painting that's literally more famous than most celebrities? What was it like in Paris in 1911, when the world's most iconic smile just vanished? And was the main suspect really Pablo Picasso? Spoiler: yes, he was very confused. Congratulations. You've just woken up in Paris, 1911. The Eiffel Tower is new. Absinthe is basically an energy drink. And somewhere in the city, a small, sweaty man is trying to fit the Mona Lisa into his laundry basket. Welcome to the wildest art heist nobody talks about. Bon chance. It's summer in Paris, 1911. The air smells like baguettes, bad decisions, and just a hint of existentialism. Artists, anarchists, and aristocrats all crowd the same boulevards. While somewhere, an Italian handyman named Vincenzo Peruggia is staring at the Mona Lisa like it owes him money. You step out into the sticky Parisian morning, the kind that glues your shirt to your back and makes every perfume smell twice as dramatic. The city is humming, a jittery symphony of horse-drawn carriages clattering over cobblestones, cafe chairs scraping the pavement, and the distant echo of someone arguing about Impressionism at an unreasonable volume. You try to blend in, but there's no blending in. Not when every third person is wearing a bowler hat, and the only thing more judgmental than the pigeons is the local bakery clerk eyeing your coin purse like you're about to commit a carb-related felony. You wander past the Seine, where poets are scribbling verses about heartbreak and cold coffee, and further on, into the thick of Montmartre. Here, the streets twist uphill, and the bohemians, those legends in dirty scarves, flop on stoops to debate whether painting nudes is a sign of genius or just a way to save on laundry. Everything feels possible in Paris, mostly because nobody seems to have a job that starts before noon. The cafes are packed wall to wall. You can hear 6 languages at once, none of them used to order anything efficiently. Waiters breeze by, balancing tiny cups of espresso and existential despair. You take a seat, immediately overcharged, and realize everyone is doing the same thing. Pretending not to stare at everyone else, but staring anyway. In 1911, side-eye is the true Parisian dialect. You practice it on the man next to you, who's drawing suspiciously detailed sketches of someone's shoes. But Paris is more than just a mood. It's a spectacle. Posters for the Moulin Rouge flutter in the breeze, promising nights you won't remember and diseases you'll never forget. Down the block, someone's selling tiny Eiffel Tower souvenirs from inside his jacket, which somehow contains 40 of them and one tired cat. A police whistle shrieks nearby, but nobody bothers to look up. This is a city built on the principle that as long as your scandal is interesting enough, no one will ask questions. Your shoes are getting dusty. That's normal. Every surface is covered in a fine layer of Parisian history. Coal smoke, dried wine, and whatever the horses left behind. You sidestep a painter rinsing his brushes in the gutter. He thanks you in the international language of the Parisian shrug. Even the city's stray dogs look at you like you're probably not worth mugging. Somewhere behind you, the bells of Notre Dame toll the hour, probably 10 minutes late. Nobody minds. Time in Paris is a suggestion, not a command. The city's rhythm is set by how long it takes to roll a cigarette, finish a chapter of Proust, or forget where you left your wallet. You're not in a hurry. The only things running on time are the rumors. And speaking of rumors, Paris in 1911 is a powder keg of gossip, conspiracy, and the sort of secrets you only whisper after midnight. Is the Louvre haunted? Did someone see Picasso stealing wine glasses from the Ritz? Who's that mysterious Italian lurking near the art galleries? You, for one, are beginning to suspect that the answer to all three questions is probably yes, but nobody will ever admit it. The city is changing. The Eiffel Tower is still the new kid on the skyline, tall, strange, and endlessly photobombing every artist's view. The old guard sighs about tradition. The young guard sighs about the old guard. And everyone else just sighs. Because that's what you do in Paris. Maybe it's the pressure of so much beauty, or maybe it's just the price of bread. You duck into a narrow alley, the kind with laundry strung overhead like surrender flags. The stone walls sweat in the afternoon heat. And the air is thick with the scent of garlic, paint thinner, and hope. Somewhere in the city, a nervous Italian with paint on his boots is hatching a plan that's about to turn all of Paris upside down. For now, though, you just keep moving, lost in a city that runs on caffeine, art, and the shared understanding that at any moment, something gloriously strange could happen, and probably will. And that's Paris, 1911. Equal parts chaos, glamour, and collective side-eye. The city of sighs, the city where, for one incredible summer, everyone's about to have a front-row seat to the greatest art caper in modern history, and absolutely nobody sees it coming. You stroll into the Louvre, a palace so big they need a map to find the bathrooms. Security? A man in a mustache and a questionable hat. Your biggest threat is tripping over a marble foot. You take a breath and look up at the endless stone facade. The Louvre isn't just a museum. It's a monument to the concept of too much of a good thing. It stretches across Paris like it's in a competition to see how many priceless objects you can fit in one building without losing track of them. The halls echo with your footsteps, and the ghostly clatter of every bored teenager forced on a school field trip since 1793. You step through the front doors, dodging a group of schoolchildren armed with sketchbooks and a tragic lack of interest. The lobby is a swirl of marble, columns, and chandeliers that look heavy enough to crush your annual salary. But the real luxury? The distinct absence of anything resembling modern security. There's no metal detector, no bag check, and certainly no cameras. Just a single guard standing at the entrance. His moustache is majestic, his posture is indifferent, and his hat looks like it's been through the Franco-Prussian War and lost. This is 1911. So, the Louvre's idea of security is optimism and the faint hope that thieves will be too intimidated by the size of the place to actually steal anything. The guard greets you with a barely audible bonjour and a shrug that communicates, "If you steal something, please don't do it while I'm on lunch." You nod respectfully. This is a man who's seen things, mostly lunch breaks, and maybe the occasional streaker. You wander into the galleries. The place is a maze, designed by people who believed that getting lost was part of the art appreciation process. Signs point in every direction, and none of them lead to the toilets. Each wing is a labyrinth of sculptures, oil paintings, and display cases. interrupted only by the occasional squeaky wooden bench, and a draft that somehow finds you wherever you sit. The marble floors are so shiny you can see your reflection, a reflection that looks more confused by the minute. Every room is crowded with treasures, ancient Greek statues, Renaissance masterpieces, French portraits, and that one Egyptian cat statue that judges you from across the room. Each piece is worth more than your entire block, and all of them are protected by velvet ropes and the unwavering hope that nobody will touch them. In theory, the staff watches carefully. In reality, the average guard is more interested in finishing their crossword than tackling a cat burglar. You stop in front of a painting. Maybe it's a Da Vinci, maybe it's a random nobleman with an excellent beard. There are a lot of those here. The Mona Lisa, she's tucked away in a small, unimpressive gallery, hanging on the wall with as much ceremony as a lost umbrella in a school cloakroom. No spotlight, no bulletproof glass. Just 4 hooks and the knowledge that most visitors are more interested in complaining about the glare than contemplating her smile. Every so often, a cleaner walks by, dusting the frames. Maintenance workers drift in and out, sometimes in uniform, sometimes looking like they just wandered in off the street. Nobody bats an eye. In fact, the best way to blend in at the Louvre is to look slightly annoyed and carry a ladder. That's not a joke. It's literally how you get away with anything here. If you're lucky, you catch a glimpse of a supervisor, a man in a crisp jacket who looks perpetually stressed, mostly because he's still searching for the missing key to the janitor's closet. He asks a passing visitor not to lean on the sculptures, then disappears into the sea of marble torsos, never to be seen again. As you wander, you realize that security here is more of a suggestion than a rule. Doors to staff-only areas are left propped open. Storage closets are unlocked, and nobody blinks if you stand a little too close to the exhibits. The assumption is that if you're in the Louvre, you must be trustworthy, cultured, or at the very least too clumsy to make a getaway with a 40-pound statue under your arm. Somewhere in the building, a small Italian man named Vincenzo is watching, learning, and making a mental note. All you really need to rob the world's most famous museum is a white work coat, a strong back, and the confidence to look like you belong. The Louvre, it turns out, is less a fortress and more a trust fall, one that's about to go spectacularly sideways. You glance back at the mustachioed guard on your way out. He's busy polishing his badge, probably thinking about dinner. In 1911, that's as close to a security system as the world's greatest museum gets. And honestly, your odds of getting lost are still higher than your odds of getting arrested. Welcome to the Louvre, where the art is priceless, the maps are useless, and the security is just a rumor whispered between marble statues. Vincenzo Peruggia is not what you'd call a criminal mastermind. He's a house painter with a grudge, a suspicious moustache, and a growing belief that the Mona Lisa should be in Italy. Also, he's allergic to dust. Imagine yourself as Vincenzo. It's Paris, 1911, and your alarm clock is a combination of creaky floorboards, a leaky roof, and your own relentless sense of destiny. You live in a rented room that doubles as a humidity experiment, surrounded by chipped wallpaper and the faint hope that someday you'll be known for something other than your chronic sneezing. Your shoes are perpetually scuffed, your shirt always a little wrinkled, and your mustache, your pride, never quite as smooth as you imagine. It's a mustache that says, "I might have a plan, but also, I might spill paint on your furniture." You're an immigrant in Paris, a city that likes to pretend it's welcoming, but only after it's checked your accent, your wallet, and your ability to appreciate impressionism. Work isn't glamorous. Your days are spent inside the world's most famous museum, wielding a paintbrush and a broom, patching up walls, scrubbing the occasional bird dropping, and mostly trying not to touch anything you can't afford to replace. The Louvre is beautiful, but it's also dusty, echoing, and absolutely full of things you're not allowed to breathe on, much less steal. But you, Vincenzo, have something no one else does. Righteous indignation and the sense that you've been chosen by fate, or at least by an overwhelming sense of Italian patriotism. Every morning you pass the Mona Lisa, glancing left, glancing right, trying to look casual while also quietly fuming. She belongs in Florence, not here behind French glass and Parisian indifference. Sometimes you talk to her, just under your breath. Don't worry, I've got a plan. She doesn't answer, but then again, she rarely does. You're not what most people would call slick. Your nerves are shot. Every time a Louvre supervisor walks past, your heart rate spikes, like you just swallowed a shot of espresso laced with adrenaline. You practice looking innocent in the mirror, but somehow always land on guilty and confused. Your French is passable if the conversation is about paint or wine. But when it comes to lying, you sound like a man who's hiding something under his coat. Which, soon, you will be. You're not even sure where the plan began. Maybe it was the day your co-worker complained about foreign art, or the afternoon you read another article about how the French take credit for everything. Maybe it's the constant, low-level humiliation of being an outsider, always the butt of the joke, never quite trusted with the good brushes. Maybe it's just the dust. Either way, you start to hatch your scheme. You keep it simple. Simple plans can't go wrong, right? Spoiler, they absolutely can. You begin with the basics. Step 1. Acquire a white worker's smock. Step 2. Figure out when the guards are distracted by lunch, a nap, or existential dread. Step 3. Hope no one notices a man with the world's most famous painting tucked under his arm. Step 4. Try not to sneeze on the merchandise. The details are fuzzy. The risks, enormous. The backup plan? There is no backup plan. You keep a notebook labeled Things to Remember. It includes essentials like Don't Look Suspicious, Remember Left from Right, and Dust Allergy Medicine. It also includes a crude sketch of the Louvre's back stairwell and a list of the nearest exits, most of which are labeled Maybe. Your hands sweat just thinking about it. Sometimes you lie awake at night, staring at the cracked ceiling, rehearsing excuses. I'm just cleaning. I'm lost. I thought this was the exit. You imagine being caught, the shame, the newspaper headlines. Clumsy Italian thief foiled by his own sinuses. Sometimes you picture the alternative, triumph, the Mona Lisa safe in Florence, Italians cheering, your mother finally proud. But mostly, you worry about the dust. You try to psych yourself up. You remind yourself of every injustice, every slight, every time someone told you to stick to painting walls and leave history to the big men. You recite silent pep talks as you stir your morning coffee, breathing in the steam and the possibility of immortality. This is your moment. You are Vincenzo Perugia, soon to be international sensation, provided you don't sneeze at the worst possible time. So here, you are anxious, scrappy, stubborn, and about to go down in history, not because you're a genius, but because sometimes the universe rewards the most nervous, dust-ridden underdog, and sometimes all it takes to change history is one man, a little courage, and a really, really bad case of allergies. There is no master plan. There's a closet, a white smock, and the kind of boldness only possible when you're hungry and underpaid. Vincenzo's strategy? Hide in a broom cupboard, wait for the coast to clear, then YOLO. You've heard of legendary heists, oceans of 11 intricate blueprints, daring escapes involving zip lines and synchronized watches. This, not that. This is a plan so simple, it actually wraps back around to genius, or at least to the kind of logic you get after too many nights inhaling paint fumes in a Paris boarding house. Vincenzo's entire blueprint boils down to look like you belong and then just leave. In 1911, it's apparently enough. You start by scoping out the Louvre, which is less casing the joint and more getting lost in endless hallways until you find yourself back at the cafe. The staff moves in a well-choreographed dance of mild annoyance and professional boredom. You blend in, a white smock over your street clothes, tools in hand, face set to just another Monday. Nobody notices. It's Monday, and the museum is closed to the public. A maintenance day, the perfect cover for a crime of pure opportunity. Or, so you tell yourself as you wedge your sweaty self into a supply closet the size of a coffin. Inside, you wait. And wait. You listen to the echo of footsteps, the distant rumble of a janitor's cart, and the unmistakable sound of a guard complaining about his lunch. Minutes stretch into hours. You try not to sneeze. You try not to think about the fact that if anyone finds you, you're not just getting fired, you're going to jail for the worst reason in history: loitering in a broom cupboard. But luck, or maybe historical inevitability, is on your side. Eventually, silence falls over the gallery. You peer out through the crack in the door and see nothing. No guards, no cleaning staff, just the Mona Lisa, hanging on the wall like a slightly smug secret. It's almost disappointingly easy. This is not Ocean's 11. This is Guy Who Forgot to Lock the Back Door. You slip out, still in your white smock, heart pounding loud enough to startle pigeons on the roof. The museum's marble floors amplify every step you take, each footfall a drumbeat of rising panic. You approach the painting with trembling hands. She looks smaller in person, fragile. But you're committed now. You lift her off the wall, suddenly aware that there's nothing between you and infamy except 11 pounds of wood, canvas, and the ghosts of 1,000 art critics. The next part of the plan? Walk out. That's it. You slide the painting under your smock. Barely fitting, awkward, but technically portable. You move quickly, but not too quickly, trying to look like a man with a purpose, not a man with the world's most famous smile under his coat. A door stands between you and freedom, and naturally, it's locked. Because of course it is. Your heart does a quick somersault. You jiggle the handle. You sweat. Then, from the end of the corridor, a plumber appears, carrying a toolbox and the expression of a man who's seen it all and refuses to care. You ask him to open the door. In your best "I work here, I'm very busy" French. He shrugs, unlocks it, and continues on his way, never once questioning why you're sweating buckets with a suspiciously large rectangle under your clothes. This is Paris in 1911. People mind their own business, especially when that business looks like someone else's problem. Out in the open, you nearly collapse with relief. Every step toward the exit is agony, convinced at any moment someone will shout, "Stop, thief!" But nobody does. You pass one final guard, who's far too busy reading the newspaper to look up. The world's most famous painting, wrapped in linen and chutzpah, walks straight out the door. You make it to the street, sunlight hitting your face like absolution. Your heart pounds as you hail a cab, clutching your prize and trying not to faint. No alarms, no chase, no dramatic music. Just you, the Mona Lisa, and the absurdity of a world where you can literally just walk out with it. In the end, Vincenzo's plan isn't legendary because it was clever. It's legendary because it worked. Sometimes history isn't made by masterminds, but by hungry house painters, bold enough or desperate enough to roll the dice, wait for a quiet hallway, and trust that everyone else is just as distracted as they are. That's how a world-class heist begins. Not with lasers and acrobatics, but with a broom closet, a white smock, and the world's most powerful shrug. Monday, August 21st, 1911. The Louvre is closed for maintenance. You blend in with the staff, acting like you belong, which, in 1911, means carrying a ladder and looking bored. Welcome to the only day of the week when the world's most famous museum empties out, not for cleaning, but for the sacred tradition of absolutely nobody getting paid overtime. Paris wakes up late, the tourists are still snoozing off yesterday's wine, and inside the palace-turned museum, it's just you and a handful of other under-caffeinated workers. The air hums with possibility. Also with the faint whiff of paint thinner and whatever's growing behind the ancient velvet curtains. This is a day made for disappearing into the background. The usual crowds, the clicking heels, the whispers about La Joconde are gone. Instead, the halls echo with the sounds of actual work. Mops slapping stone, hammers tapping, and a dozen men debating whether that statue's nose was broken before or after the revolution. If you want to commit a crime in broad daylight, you pick a day when nobody's really watching. Just enough hustle to provide cover, not enough supervision to make you nervous. Well, more nervous. Your disguise is basic but effective. The classic worker's smock and a face set to "I have somewhere to be." In 1911, this is basically a master key. Carry a ladder, and you become invisible. Nobody questions a man with a ladder, except maybe to ask if you'll fix their drafty window next. The Louvre is so sprawling, so stuffed with paintings, relics, and the occasional taxidermied swan, that the only thing more common than art is a bored laborer on the clock. As you walk through the empty galleries, you pass a cluster of other workers arguing over whose turn it is to haul buckets down 4 flights of stairs. The guards lounge near the front, swapping stories about the worst tourist questions they've ever heard. No, madame. The Venus de Milo's arms were not lost in the laundry. The hierarchy of authority is clear. The guards outrank the painters outrank the cleaners, and absolutely everyone outranks the guy mopping up after the horses out front. You move from gallery to gallery, trailing dust and indifference, blending into the wallpaper. You pass the Mona Lisa's room, room 13, Salon Carré, a modest gallery for a not-so-modest portrait. No one gives it a second glance. She's hung between 2 other paintings, neither of which will ever get their own Netflix documentary. A few chairs for sitting, some velvet rope for keeping the enthusiastic at bay, and that's about it. If you look long enough, you realize she's really not that big. It's almost underwhelming, which, ironically, is the secret to her security. Nobody expects the tiny painting in the boring room to be the world's most sought-after work. The hours crawl by. Workers come and go. The guards doze. Somewhere, a supervisor is writing a stern memo about a missing feather duster. You pace, timing your move to the natural rhythms of Louvre life. This is less Mission Impossible and more Mission Slightly Inconvenient. Your nerves buzz as you wait for the perfect window, the moment when attention is lowest, when everyone else is busy pretending to be busy. By mid-morning, the gallery is empty. The air is thick with dust motes and opportunity. You pause for dramatic effect, but nobody is watching. In fact, the only one who seems remotely suspicious is you. But you keep moving, because in the Louvre on a Monday, movement equals legitimacy. If you stand still, someone might ask you to fetch something, or, worse, start an actual conversation about art. With the skill of someone who's spent his life working jobs nobody notices, you slip behind a screen and into a storage area. This is your hiding place, your moment to breathe. You listen for footsteps. all quiet. The coast is clear, or as clear as it gets in a building with more secret doors than a magician's dressing room. And that's the genius of it. The Monday maintenance day is the Louvre's one weak spot. Too many people to count, not enough people to care. If you're clever, patient, and can carry a ladder without tripping, you can blend in perfectly. That's how a stolen painting begins, not with a bang, but with a sigh, a ladder, and the blissful emptiness of a sleepy Parisian Monday. You wait, you sweat, you watch the guards shuffle away, and then, like a very confused ninja, you lift the Mona Lisa off the wall, stuff her under your work coat, and head for the door. The only thing standing between you and freedom? A locked stairwell. Oops. Let's break it down. Stealing the Mona Lisa is not an Olympic event. It's more like an anxious round of hide and seek, with slightly higher stakes and much worse lighting. This is not the Hollywood heist, with dramatic music and a crew of 12. This is you, alone, sweating so much you're basically lubricated for escape, praying that nobody needs a mop in the next 5 minutes. Step 1. Approach. The gallery is so quiet you can hear your own heartbeat, and possibly the distant echo of someone complaining about the coffee in the staff break room. You glance left, right, up, down, nobody. Not even a stray museum mouse. Your white worker's smock feels like it's glowing with guilt. If guilt were a fashion statement, you'd be on the cover of every Parisian magazine. Step 2. The grab. The Mona Lisa isn't attached by lasers, alarms, or any mechanism that would inconvenience a toddler. Just a few hooks and the assumption that nobody would be foolish enough to try what you're about to do. You reach up, hands trembling, and for one awful moment you think you might drop her. You imagine your legacy, world's most famous painting, ruined by sweaty Italian. But luck, or history, is with you. The canvas comes free. It's heavier than it looks, and just awkward enough to make you regret never lifting weights. Step 3. The concealment. You wedge the painting under your smock, where it's immediately clear that you look less like a museum worker and more like someone who's gained 20 pounds in a single rectangular area. The Mona Lisa pokes you in the ribs. Her enigmatic smile now seems to say, "This was a bad idea." You agree. You don't run. That would be suspicious. You walk, attempting what you hope passes for nonchalance, but really looks like a man who's swallowed a window frame. Your shoes squeak. Your breathing is so loud, it's practically a confession. Each step toward the stairwell feels like crossing a field full of rakes. One false move, and you'll set off the world's slowest, most disappointing manhunt. At the stairwell, you reach for the handle. Locked. Of course. For a second, you're paralyzed by panic. The Mona Lisa's corners dig into your stomach. You calculate. Do you abandon ship and stash her behind a conveniently large statue? Do you fake a fainting spell? Do you just sit down and start crying, which, honestly, is not off the table? But then, luck again. From down the hall comes the sound of footsteps, someone else in the building. A plumber, probably wondering why the toilets still leak after the latest round of maintenance. You channel every ounce of Parisian indifference you can muster and wave him over. "Can you open this?" You mumble in your best, "I'm very busy" accent. He shrugs, unlocks the door, and never once questions the suspicious bulge under your coat. If there's a lesson here, it's that nobody questions a man who looks like he's having a terrible day at work. You descend the stairs. Every creak is a shot of adrenaline. The Mona Lisa shifts and nearly slips. You adjust, sweating even more than you thought possible. At the bottom, you peek out. No one. You shuffle down a back corridor and out a side entrance. Each step both victory and terror. The hardest part? Acting like this is completely normal, like people smuggle Renaissance masterpieces out of the Louvre every week. Outside, the sun is too bright, the street too busy, and your nerves too frayed. You hail a cab, trying not to hyperventilate. The driver eyes your odd, lumpy silhouette and says nothing. You're just another Monday in Paris, apparently. 60 seconds is all it takes. 1 minute of chaos, stupidity, and sheer luck. 1 minute to make history. The Mona Lisa is gone, the heist is done, and somewhere in the halls of the Louvre, someone is about to have the worst Tuesday of their life. And you're on your way home, hiding the most famous face in the world under your coat, praying nobody asks about the new artwork in your living room. Trapped in a service staircase, you wait, heart pounding, painting hidden under your arm. Finally, a plumber walks by and unlocks the door. You nod. He nods. Nobody questions the man carrying priceless art in a smock. Time slows to the kind of crawl usually reserved for root canals and awkward family dinners. You're perched on the top step, heart trying to punch through your ribs, sweat trickling down your spine, and the Mona Lisa clutched in a death grip that probably isn't doing wonders for Renaissance varnish. Every footstep in the corridor sounds like an executioner. Every second you spend here is 1 second closer to someone yelling, "Sacrilege!" and your name ending up in the newspapers, right under "Local man invents new way to get fired." There's no backup plan, just you, the world's most famous smile, and your best attempt at blending in with a bucket of anxiety and 11 pounds of loot under your coat. You run through your excuses. "I was cleaning. This isn't what it looks like. I am the painting now." None of them seem promising. Down below, the sound of keys rattling, a musical note you never appreciated until now. The plumber appears, toolbox in one hand, existential exhaustion in the other. He's seen it all. Broken pipes, leaking ceilings, painters asleep in the broom closet. He takes one look at you, a man with a suspiciously bulky smock and a wild look in his eyes, and decides, sensibly, that he doesn't get paid enough to ask questions. He opens the door. The universe, briefly, is on your side. You slip past him, muttering mercy in a voice 2 octaves higher than usual. The Mona Lisa's wooden panel thuds softly against your ribs with every hurried step. This is not a Hollywood getaway. There's no dramatic string music, just the dull echo of your shoes on tile and the low-grade panic humming in your ears. The service corridors of the Louvre are a warren of dead ends and locked doors, the kind of place where even the ghosts get lost. You move quickly, trying to remember every twist and turn. Do you go left at the statue of the suspiciously chubby cherub, or right at the closet with the mop that looks older than Napoleon? The Mona Lisa is starting to feel heavier by the second, as if Da Vinci himself is weighing your soul. You manage to find a side exit, one of those doors reserved for staff and people who definitely aren't absconding with priceless artwork. You peek outside. No police. No angry curators, just the everyday chaos of a Parisian street. For one brief, glorious moment, you're free. The only thing standing between you and success is your ability to walk like a normal person, and not like you're hiding the entire Italian Renaissance under your armpit. You step out into the sunlight, blinking, blending into the city. Paris doesn't notice. Cabs rattle by. Street vendors yell about chestnuts, and somewhere a group of artists debate whether blue is a feeling or just a color. You hail a taxi. The driver gives you the look, the "what fresh disaster are you bringing into my cab?" look, but shrugs and waves you in. It's Paris. People have seen worse. Inside the cab, you sit with the Mona Lisa on your lap, trying to look casual, which is difficult when your bag has a face. The driver grumbles about traffic. You stare straight ahead, wondering if the painting's eyes are following you, or if you're just losing your mind from adrenaline and sleep deprivation. You try to make small talk, but your French is failing and your nerves are shot. "Nice weather we're stealing, having today," you almost say. before settling for awkward silence. The ride feels like it takes a year. You glance back every block, expecting sirens, a battalion of Louvre guards, maybe even the ghost of Napoleon himself. But nothing. No pursuit, no alarm. Apparently, nobody has noticed that the most famous painting in the world just hopped a cab to the suburbs. At last, you arrive at your shabby apartment. You tip the cabbie, mumble something about fragile cargo, and scurry inside. The Mona Lisa gets her new home, under your bed, next to a pair of socks and an old newspaper. You collapse on the mattress, adrenaline ebbing, panic still buzzing. You did it. You pulled off the world's most famous art heist with nothing but a smock, a plumber's indifference, and a heartbeat that may never return to normal. And the best part? Nobody suspects a thing. At least, not yet. Welcome to your new life, world-class art thief, professional overthinker, and owner of the single dustiest masterpiece in all of Paris, home at last. Where do you hide the world's most wanted painting? If you're Vincenzo, you stick it under your bed for 2 years, right next to the spare shoes and whatever's growing in the dust bunnies. It sounds almost laughable after all that tension, the getaways, the sweating, the existential dread. You, Vincenzo, the world's newest art thief, bring the Mona Lisa home and promptly shove her beneath a sagging mattress like she's an overdue library book. There's no armored safe, no complicated hiding spot, no secret compartment in the wall, just a creaky Parisian bed frame, the thin protection of a moth-eaten blanket, and a lingering hope that the landlord never gets curious about your antiques collection. You drop to your knees, lift the edge of the mattress, and slide her under, the wooden panels scraping against forgotten socks and a stack of last month's bread receipts. The Mona Lisa stares up at you, her famously mysterious expression now tinged with what you swear is disappointment. If Leonardo da Vinci were here, he'd probably faint or at least ask you to dust more often. Every evening, after a day of blending in and dodging the newsboys, you come home to the world's most exclusive, highly inconvenient roommate. She's always there, silent, judging, gathering a fine patina of dust, cat hair, and maybe the occasional crumb from a midnight snack. You get used to it. Sort of. Life becomes a delicate dance. Hide the evidence, avoid accidental kicks to the national treasure, and never, ever mention your special art project to anyone. At first, paranoia is your new best friend. Every knock at the door is the police. Every bump in the night is the sound of justice catching up. You develop ninja skills for sliding the painting further back if you ever have visitors. You invent a backstory for anyone who snoops too much. Oh, that's just my grandmother's old cutting board. Very sentimental. You sleep with one eye open, half expecting the ghost of Mona Lisa to float up in the middle of the night and demand a better view. Over time, though, the absurdity settles into routine. Laundry day? Just make sure nobody sees you dusting under the bed for allergies. House inspection? Suddenly, you're a master of distraction, offering tea, feigning headaches, inventing plumbing emergencies in every room except your own. You become intimately familiar with the sounds of your apartment building. The heavy footsteps of the landlady, the squeak of the mail slot, the clink of the neighbor's endless wine bottles. Each one sends a brief jolt of panic, but so far, luck is on your side. Keeping the Mona Lisa hidden is not glamorous work. Sometimes you talk to her, whispering apologies and updates like, "Don't worry, Lisa, you'll be famous soon, probably." Other times, you wonder if she's bored. After centuries of watching kings, queens, and art students, she's now an audience to your midnight pacing and nervous snacking. Her legendary smile is now less mysterious and more exasperated, as if she's saying, 2 years? Really? This is the Renaissance? You try to keep up with the news. Each day brings a fresh headline: police baffled, the Louvre in chaos, detectives convinced the thief is an international mastermind living on the Riviera. You, meanwhile, are living on stale bread and stress, ducking under windows whenever someone shouts too loudly in the street. The most excitement the Mona Lisa gets is when you accidentally drop your shoe on her corner, sending a tiny wave of panic down your spine. There are close calls. The landlord almost discovers her during an impromptu inspection. A neighbor's dog wanders in and sniffs a little too closely at the bed. You briefly consider moving her, but to where? The oven? The wardrobe? In the end, nothing feels safer than the most obvious place of all, the spot nobody would think to check because nobody, in their right mind, would believe you had the Mona Lisa hiding next to a pair of socks and an overdue bar tab. And so, days blur into weeks. Weeks into months. The world keeps searching, the papers keep speculating, and you keep dusting under the bed. This is your life now: art thief, nervous insomniac, part-time amateur cleaner. You may not be a criminal mastermind, but you're the only person in Paris, maybe the world, who can say they keep their priceless art right where they can find it. Under the bed, behind the socks, and, hopefully, beneath suspicion. The next day, the Louvre staff realizes something's off. Wasn't there a painting here yesterday? Cue chaos, headlines, and the world's saddest game of Where's Waldo. It's Tuesday morning in Paris, and the city wakes to a hum of ordinary noise. Bakery doors swinging open, newspaper boys hawking headlines, and the distant clatter of horse-drawn carts. Inside the Louvre, everything feels exactly as it should until someone strolls into the Salon Carré with a mop, glances at the wall, and pauses. Something is missing, something famous. The Mona Lisa, usually hanging quietly between two much larger, much less smiling paintings, is gone. At first, nobody panics. After all, it's maintenance day. Maybe someone took her down for cleaning, or a little dusting, or to lend her a hat for a museum event. Stranger things have happened in Paris. But the cleaning staff can't find her. The gallery supervisor can't find her. Eventually, the head of security, still nursing last night's wine, shuffles in and starts asking questions that sound suspiciously like accusations. By noon, the entire museum is buzzing with confusion and low-key existential dread. Where's Lisa? When was she last seen? Who signed the pond checkout log? Does the Mona Lisa even have a checkout log? Nobody's sure. The only thing everyone agrees on is that she was definitely there yesterday. Panic spreads the way only panic can in a French institution. First in whispers, she's probably in the conservatory. Then in arguments, I told you to fix that lock. And finally in outright chaos. Guards start checking every corner, under every bench, behind every tapestry. One frantic intern is sent to the basement with a flashlight and strict instructions to look for anything that's smiling. Rumors fly. Maybe she's been borrowed for a private viewing. Or maybe the staff has finally decided to move her to a better lit spot. Nobody wants to say the word stolen. Not yet. But soon, it's impossible to ignore. The police are called. Detectives arrive with hats at odd angles and notepads at the ready, delighted by the chance to investigate something more exciting than the usual stolen umbrellas and missing baguettes. Questions start flying. Who had access to the gallery? Who was working late? Has anyone seen a suspicious-looking Italian? The answer is always yes, but nobody's sure if that matters. News spreads faster than fresh gossip at a Parisian hair salon. By afternoon, the city's newspapers have caught wind of the disaster. La Joconde disparue. Scream the headlines. Parisians who have never stepped foot in the Louvre suddenly become experts on art security. Café conversations turn into amateur investigations. Did you hear the Mona Lisa is missing? I heard it was the Russians. No, it's a secret government plot. Or maybe aliens. Have you checked the Eiffel Tower? The Louvre goes into lockdown. Every entrance is guarded, every exit watched. Museum staff are questioned, then questioned again. An unfortunate janitor is grilled for so long he briefly forgets his own name. The director paces his office, composing sorrowful letters to the Minister of Culture, the President, and his grandmother. Outside, crowds gather, desperate for any scrap of news. Children press their faces to the glass, hoping to see something dramatic, like a high-speed chase involving a mysterious woman in Renaissance dress. Inside, the remaining art looks on in silent solidarity. The Venus de Milo shrugs her shoulderless shoulders. The winged Victory of Samothrace leans forward, as if waiting for the punchline. For the first time, the Louvre is more famous for what it doesn't have than what it does. By nightfall, Paris is a city obsessed. The Mona Lisa's face, printed on every newspaper, whispered about in every bar, is suddenly more ubiquitous than absinthe. Everyone, from street vendors to senators, has a theory and a suspect. Detectives stumble through tip after tip, most of them useless. I saw a woman with a mysterious package. I think my neighbor has a new painting. My cousin's uncle's dog saw something suspicious. The city is swept up in a collective frenzy. A desperate, dramatic, and very French game of "Where's Lisa?" And all the while, beneath a squeaky bed in a dusty Parisian flat, the real Mona Lisa waits, watching history lose its collective mind, and smiling her secret, timeless smile. Police start grilling everyone in Paris, including a young Pablo Picasso and his poet friend Apollinaire, who are technically guilty of being suspicious artists, but not much else. Picasso spends the week convinced he's going to jail for just having a mustache. The Mona Lisa is gone, and Paris has lost its collective mind. The police, desperate for leads, adopt a strategy beloved by exasperated parents and teachers everywhere. Round up the usual suspects, which, in 1911 Paris, means anyone who wears a scarf in July, paints in cubes, or has ever written a poem about a chair. The result? Every artist, writer, and bohemian with a bad haircut is suddenly under the microscope. You are Picasso, which means your life is already a series of strange interrogations. By critics, by lovers, by your own mirror. Now, you're being interrogated by the actual police. The officers' questions are a blur of accusations and mistranslated Spanish. Where were you on Monday? Do you know any Italians? Why do you paint noses on the side of people's faces? You try to explain that you were at home, brooding over a broken paintbrush and a lukewarm café au lait. The officer takes notes, possibly spelling your name wrong on purpose. Next, it's Apollinaire's turn. He's a poet, which in 1911 Paris is basically an excuse for everything from insomnia to petty theft. He has the unfortunate luck of looking permanently guilty, tousled hair, haunted eyes, and a habit of muttering philosophical questions at pigeons. He's already on thin ice with the authorities for his outspoken views, surrealist parties, and that one time he allegedly tried to liberate a stone sphinx from a garden. Apollinaire tries to explain that his only crimes involve questionable metaphors, but the detective just circles the word anarchist in his notebook and sighs deeply. Meanwhile, in the Latin Quarter and Montmartre, the artistic community goes into full lockdown. Every cafe is abuzz with rumors. Did Picasso really take it? Is this the end of art as we know it? Someone swears they saw Modigliani running down the street with a mysterious package, but it turns out to be his laundry. Others are convinced the theft is actually a revolutionary art statement. Maybe the Mona Lisa stole herself, tired of being stared at by tourists and schoolchildren with jam on their fingers. The police eager to show progress, drag in everyone remotely eccentric. Your friend who paints with his feet? Suspect. That woman who always wears red and never blinks? Suspect. Your neighbor's parrot who can whistle the Marseillaise? Highly suspect. For a brief moment, Paris becomes a city where being creative is almost as suspicious as having a beard. Picasso, meanwhile, is spiraling. Every time he hears footsteps in the hall, he assumes it's the gendarmes coming to throw him in a dungeon, or at least a room with very bad lighting. He confides in Apollinaire, who reassures him by saying, "Don't worry, if they arrest us, we'll be famous," which is exactly the sort of comfort poets think is helpful. Picasso rehearses his defense. "I never even liked the Mona Lisa. Too symmetrical." He tries shaving his mustache, but decides he looks even more criminal without it. It gets worse when the papers catch wind of the investigation. Picasso, questioned in theft of La Joconde, blares every headline. Half of Paris is convinced he masterminded the heist as some sort of radical Cubist protest. The other half thinks he did it for love, money, or out of sheer boredom. Strangers begin to recognize him on the street, sometimes offering advice. Check behind the big clock. Sometimes just whispering and giggling behind gloved hands. He starts wearing hats at odd angles, hoping anonymity is a matter of millinery. Eventually, the police admit they have nothing. No evidence, no motive, just a vague sense of unease and a stack of artist sketches that all look suspiciously like Picasso. Apollinaire is released with a warning about his dangerous ideas. Picasso, exhausted, vows never to get involved in another art scandal, at least until next Thursday. The Mona Lisa, of course, is still missing, tucked safely under a bed, collecting dust and possibly a slight Parisian accent. But in the city's feverish imagination, she is everywhere. In every garret, behind every curtain, and most suspiciously, somewhere inside the wild, kaleidoscopic mind of Picasso. And so, Paris learns a valuable lesson. When in doubt, blame the guy with the paint stains and the excellent mustache. From Paris to New York, everyone is talking about the missing Mona Lisa. It's 1911's version of going viral, except you can't retweet a wanted poster. Every day, new wild rumors. She's in the Seine. She's in a suitcase. She's in my uncle's garage. The Mona Lisa's disappearance is the story of the century. And suddenly, no one cares about politics or war or the rising cost of onions. Instead, the world is obsessed with a missing smile. Within hours of the news breaking, every newspaper in France, Britain, and America runs with breathless headlines. Mona Lisa stolen. Where's Da Vinci's darling? French security a joke? One American paper calls it the crime of the age, which frankly is a bit dramatic for a painting that could fit inside a reasonably sized pizza box. You can picture the newsrooms, a chaos of ink-stained editors and chain-smoking reporters, yelling for fresh copy and better adjectives. Everyone wants an exclusive, but nobody actually knows anything. So every fact gets twisted, stretched, or occasionally just made up for fun. The Mona Lisa is now less a missing artwork and more a global meme. A New York tabloid runs a cartoon of the painting riding the subway. A London paper claims she's been shipped to South America in a crate of bananas. In Berlin, an anonymous source swears she's disguised as a waitress in a Parisian cafe, serving absinthe to detectives too frazzled to notice. The rumors are relentless. One day, she's supposedly seen floating down the Seine, a life preserver around her delicate neck. The next, she's tucked into a suitcase on the Orient Express, enjoying a scenic ride across Europe. By the weekend, at least 5 people are convinced their neighbor's garage contains a suspiciously well-wrapped Renaissance lady. Somewhere, An aspiring novelist decides the painting has eloped with a marble bust from the next gallery over, sparking a cross-continental romance that will inspire generations of bored museum guards. No one is immune to Mona Lisa fever. In Paris, the crowds outside the Louvre swell. People gather just to point at the empty wall and speculate. Did she walk off herself? Was it an inside job? Is this the work of anarchists? Art students? A band of well-dressed cats? Some days, the police can barely keep up with the tips pouring in. Every art expert and amateur detective in France has a theory and a suspicious lack of evidence. One man insists he saw a man with a mysterious package and a nervous moustache. The description fits half of Paris. Across the Atlantic, American newspapers compete to outdo the French in melodrama. Mona Lisa sails for Chicago. Painting held for ransom in New Jersey cellar. The New York Times speculates that the theft is part of a sinister international art ring. The Chicago Tribune suggests that she's been taken by Italian nationalists, while the Boston Globe, perhaps misunderstanding the assignment, simply prints the Mona Lisa's face and the caption missing, "Please return." The Louvre's empty space becomes a celebrity in its own right. Tourists flock to see the scene of the crime, and vendors begin selling postcards of the bare patch of wall. Some even buy tiny mustachioed disguises for their own family portraits in honor of the thief. In bars, people place bets on how long it will take the police to find her. In salons, the city's elites speculate that this is all an elaborate publicity stunt to distract from government scandals. It isn't, but it works. Politicians are dragged into the mess. The French Minister of Culture is asked point blank, "How could you let this happen?" He mutters about foreign threats and immediately requests extra funding for velvet ropes and more mustachioed guards. The Italian ambassador issues a statement denying any involvement and then quietly asks his staff if anyone back home is suddenly in possession of a small, famous smile. In the end, the only people not swept up in the frenzy are the Mona Lisa herself, still tucked safely under Vincenzo's bed, gathering dust. And Vincenzo, who is now living in a state of permanent anxiety, convinced that at any moment, the entire world will turn up on his doorstep. Newspaper in one hand, pitchfork in the other. And so, as the world speculates, shouts, and doodles Mona Lisas on every scrap of newsprint, a single painting becomes the most famous missing person on the planet. Proof that even before the age of Twitter, nothing goes viral quite like a great, beautiful mystery. Paris police, museum staff, and a few self-appointed detectives with absolutely no qualifications begin searching every attic, cellar, and suspicious bakery in the city. Spoiler: they find nothing except some stale croissants. You'd think, with the world's most famous painting missing, Paris would suddenly become a city of experts, every inspector twirling a magnifying glass and quoting Sherlock Holmes. In reality, the investigation quickly devolves into a citywide game of hot and cold, but with less logic and more pastries. The Louvre's dignified marble halls are replaced with frantic footsteps, wild accusations, and the distant, ever-present sound of someone knocking over a stack of mops. The official police force does what any overwhelmed bureaucracy does in a crisis. Paperwork, mountains of it, forms are filled, signatures collected, and meetings held in which the only thing that multiplies faster than the theories is the coffee consumed. The detectives in charge, more used to chasing pickpockets and quelling bar fights, find themselves staring at a wall where the Mona Lisa used to be, trying to look pensive and profound for the newspapers. The clues, they mutter, are everywhere, except inconveniently where the painting is. Meanwhile, the museum staff is roped in, whether they like it or not. Curators, janitors, and anyone caught holding a clipboard are drafted into the search. Room by room, closet by closet, They prowl the Louvre's endless corridors, shining lanterns into nooks that haven't seen daylight since the reign of Napoleon. Everyone's suddenly an amateur detective. The head of sculpture insists he can smell a clue, while the coachroom attendant insists the last visitor looked a little too interested in umbrellas. The gift shop cashier fingers a suspicious-looking tourist who bought a postcard and lingered too long by the keychains. It's not much, but in the absence of leads, it's something. But why stop at the museum? The search quickly spills out into the streets of Paris. Local police, armed with grim expressions and a vague sense of direction, begin inspecting attics, wine cellars, and bakeries. If there's a door, they'll knock on it. If there's a crate, they'll pry it open. At least 3 unlucky cats are mistaken for small, mysterious packages. More than one baguette is interrogated, just in case the thief had a taste for carbs. Enter the self-appointed detectives, Parisians with an eye for drama and absolutely no investigative training. Monsieur Dubois from the flower shop swears he saw a suspicious shadow in the alley last night. Madame Lefebvre from the 4th floor launches her own inquiry by eavesdropping at her window, armed with opera glasses and a running commentary for anyone who'll listen. Neighborhood children form their own search squads, mostly as an excuse to snoop through grown-up stuff and collect shiny buttons as evidence. Rumors multiply like rabbits. The Mona Lisa is hiding in a secret tunnel. She's disguised as a very large baguette. She's been taken to the catacombs by a cult of art-loving bats. Each new theory is more absurd than the last. But Paris is gripped by a fever. Even the pigeons seem suspicious. Days pass, and the clues pile up, none of them useful. An empty frame in a Montmartre garret turns out to be just that. Empty. A hidden chamber in a bakery's basement reveals nothing but a year's supply of moldy flour. A tip about a mysterious foreigner renting a room with a view of the Seine turns out to be a traveling cheese salesman with very poor hygiene. The city's actual detectives are exhausted. Their self-appointed counterparts are even worse off, plagued by exhaustion, disappointment, and the occasional yeast infection from all those bakery raids. The Mona Lisa remains stubbornly missing. The only things found in abundance are croissants, complaints, and the growing suspicion that maybe, just maybe, the painting is nowhere in Paris at all. Yet, for all their bumbling, you can't fault them for lack of determination. Paris is a city united, museum staff, police, and passionate amateurs, scouring every shadow for a trace of a smile. It's the least effective, most wholehearted search party in art history. And in some small way, it's almost touching. For once, everyone's on the same side, rooting for a painting, searching for a mystery, and accidentally making the world's best case for improving French museum security. Suddenly, everyone's grandmother has a Mona Lisa in their parlor. Hundreds of forgeries flood the market, and art dealers start to wonder if they're selling more Lisas than the Louvre ever owned. Welcome to Paris, 1911. The city where imitation becomes an art form, and the Mona Lisa is suddenly the most copied woman in the world, narrowly beating out Queen Victoria and your neighbor's cat. The original is missing, but her clones are multiplying faster than baguettes at breakfast. The theft turns into a gold rush for forgers, hobbyists, and anyone with a paint set and questionable morals. At first, it's just a few sly opportunists. Some shifty-eyed painters in Montmartre slap a knowing smile onto every canvas they can get their hands on, offering genuine Mona Lisas to tourists for the price of a decent bottle of wine. But soon, the whole city is at it. Street markets, art shops, and even respectable galleries are suddenly flush with suspiciously familiar faces. Lisa with red hair, Lisa with a moustache, Lisa holding a poodle, Lisa wearing only a strategically placed baguette. Every household wants a piece of the action. Grandmothers proudly display their rare family heirlooms, which, up until last week, were definitely portraits of a goat or Uncle Henri. Suddenly, these canvases are scrubbed, repainted, and unveiled as lost works of Da Vinci inherited through secret Venetian relatives. Nobody questions it after all. Who can prove otherwise? The real thing is missing, and Paris is in the mood to believe anything. Art dealers are baffled. Their days become a whirlwind of eccentric customers, each insisting they possess the true Mona Lisa. One woman claims she found hers in a church attic, next to a statue of St. Anthony, and a suspiciously modern-looking clock. Another man insists his great-grandfather smuggled the painting out of Florence disguised as a wheel of cheese. By midweek, dealers are so overwhelmed that they start grading forgeries by creativity. Extra points for unicorns. The police aren't sure what to do. They're still busy checking bakeries and flower shops for the real painting. But now they're also called to settle arguments about whose Mona Lisa is smellier. For a brief period, the city's forgers grow bolder, signing the backs of their work with fake Da Vinci signatures, secret codes, and, in one case, a recipe for onion soup. No one wants to admit that. At this point, there are probably more Mona Lisas in Paris than loaves of bread. Word spreads beyond Paris. Soon, the entire world is awash in knockoffs. In New York, some entrepreneurial soul starts mass-producing Mona Lisa on velvet portraits, perfect for hanging above your newfangled phonograph. In London, a soap company markets a bar stamped with her face. Now you too can bathe with La Joconde. Even in Buenos Aires, a traveling magician claims to have conjured her from thin air, charging a small fee for a glimpse, no refunds. The Mona Lisa becomes a cultural virus, replicated and mutated. Art critics begin writing treatises on the psychology of the forger, and whether Lisa's real power is her smile or her sudden ability to make people part with their francs. The city's satirists have a field day. Newspapers run cartoons of the Mona Lisa robbing banks, getting lost on the metro, or hosting a dinner party with Napoleon, and a worried-looking detective. The Mona Lisa's new life as a celebrity is in full swing, and everyone's invited, provided they have a brush and a sense of humor. Amid all the chaos, a strange thing happens. The world grows even more obsessed with the missing painting. People start asking, what makes the real Mona Lisa so special? Is it her enigmatic smile, her centuries-old mystery, or just the fact that nobody knows where she is? For every bad forgery, for every Lisa with googly eyes and crooked teeth, the legend of the original only grows. So Paris becomes a city of double takes. Every shadowy corner, every candlelit parlor, hides a Lisa staring serenely back. And somewhere, the real one lies under a bed, gathering dust, utterly irreplaceable, but surrounded by a city and a world, suddenly full of rivals, fakes, and hopeful failures. The true Mona Lisa might be missing, but her spirit? That's everywhere. While the world is losing its collective mind, Vincenzo is quietly losing his. He barely leaves his room, listens for sirens, and occasionally takes the Mona Lisa out from under the bed just to apologize to her. Picture it, the summer air thick with suspicion and newsprint. Paris vibrating with rumors and frantic art detectives. But inside Vincenzo's small rented flat, the real drama isn't being splashed across the headlines. It's playing out in nervous glances at the door, restless pacing, and a one-sided relationship with the world's most famous painting. Vincenzo Peruggia, accidental international criminal, has become a prisoner of his own masterpiece. You're Vincenzo, and your nerves are fried. Every creak of the hallway is a potential police raid. The sound of footsteps on the stairs becomes a recurring nightmare soundtrack. You've developed the reflexes of a startled cat and the sleep schedule of a nervous raccoon. Some nights, you swear you can hear the Louvre's stone walls groaning with disappointment. reaching out across the city to haunt you for your crimes against museum etiquette. Your world shrinks. You ration your groceries, so you don't have to leave the apartment. You skip evening strolls. The neighborhood bakery, once your daily sanctuary, is now enemy territory. What if the baker recognizes you from one of those wanted sketches in the newspaper? You start eating more sardines, less bread. Sardines come in cans, and the cans don't ask questions. The Mona Lisa herself becomes both companion and silent accuser. Late at night, when the city quiets and your anxiety is at its loudest, you slip her from under the bed, unwrap her as carefully as a priest handling a relic, and place her on a rickety chair by the window. "I'm sorry," you whisper, in a tone usually reserved for breaking up with a houseplant. "You deserve better than this." Her famous smile doesn't judge, but you imagine, if she could speak, she'd have some pointed opinions about dust, darkness, and the lack of good conversation. Sometimes you talk to her just to pass the time. "Did you hear the latest rumor, Lisa? Someone thinks you're disguised as a poodle in Marseille." Imagine that. Renaissance glamour, but with floppy ears. Other nights, you fret out loud, rehearsing what you'll say if the police show up. "I can explain, officer. It was a patriotic act." Also, the Louvre's security is really more of a suggestion. Sleep is a distant memory. You catnap in the early morning, waking at every car horn, every distant shout. You dream of police raids and trial by angry mob, of the Mona Lisa being paraded through the streets by the authorities, her smile somehow sadder and more mysterious than ever. Some mornings you wake, convinced she's gone, only to check under the bed and feel a surge of relief and dread. Your social life evaporates. Friends wonder why you're never at the cafe anymore. Family letters pile up, unopened. You write drafts of explanations and apologies but never send them. The fewer people who know where you are, the safer you feel. Or so you tell yourself. The walls of your room start to close in, the shadows grow longer, and even your mustache seems to droop with stress. Every day brings fresh headlines, new accusations, and yet another theory about where the painting has gone. Sometimes you laugh, Lisa in a suitcase, Lisa in Siberia, Lisa in a hot air balloon over the Pyrenees. But mostly you worry, how long can you keep this up? Is there a reward for returning the Mona Lisa? Or just a one-way ticket to jail? Did you make history? Or just a massive, dust-covered mistake? And so life continues. Vincenzo, the world's most anxious art thief, keeping the Mona Lisa company through weeks, months, and eventually years of isolation. It's not the glamorous life of a criminal genius. It's a daily grind of doubt, regret, and the world's most awkward roommate situation. The city may be hunting for her, but you're just hoping to survive another day without anyone finding out what's really hiding under your bed. Vincenzo dreams of glory, maybe a little cash, and returning the painting to Italy. But selling the world's most recognizable artwork turns out to be tricky. Every time he considers it, he remembers he can't even sell his old coat. You'd think that, with a priceless Da Vinci under your bed, you'd be one telegram away from fortune and fame. Maybe you've pictured the scenario. You walk into a shadowy room, painting wrapped in a mysterious velvet cloth, and an eager collector counts stacks of cash, eyes shining with greed and admiration. In reality, the underground art market is less cinematic intrigue and more awkward silence and severe trust issues. First, you have to find a buyer. Someone who wants the Mona Lisa, doesn't mind that she's a bit hot, as in globally wanted, and, preferably, isn't an undercover cop. So, you make lists, mental lists, scribbled lists, lists on the back of stale baguette wrappers. You cross off names as quickly as you write them down. Every rich uncle or old art dealer you can think of is either a law-abiding citizen or a distant cousin who still holds a grudge about the time you borrowed his goat. You imagine posting a discreet advertisement. For sale. Mysterious Italian lady. Slightly dusty. Must pick up in person. No police. But you know better. It's 1911, and there's no Craigslist, no burner phones, no online anonymity. Every word you say could be overheard. Every letter intercepted. You're living in a world where even selling your extra shoes is a negotiation that requires 2 witnesses and a handshake. And even if you could find a buyer, what would you say? Trust me, it's the real Mona Lisa. The entire world knows it's missing, and anyone bold enough to buy it is probably bold enough to sell you out for a lighter prison sentence. The more you think about it, the more impossible it feels. You rehearse different accents, try to grow a beard as a disguise, and even consider smuggling her out of France disguised as a particularly dramatic sandwich. Nothing seems quite right. At one point, in a fit of optimism, or possibly desperation, you wrap the Mona Lisa in an old bedsheet and pace around your tiny apartment, practicing the handoff. Here, take her. She's very quiet, doesn't eat much. You try to imagine the negotiation, but it always ends with the buyer laughing you out of the room or the police showing up in full force, demanding you explain why you have Da Vinci's masterpiece wrapped in paisley linen. It doesn't help that, in the midst of your plotting, the newspapers are having a field day. Every week brings another story about secret agents, international conspiracies, and daring thieves with remarkable skills and underworld connections. If only they knew. Your underworld connections consist of a man named Carlo who sells bootleg wine and once lost his hat at the opera. You briefly consider returning the painting anonymously, but pride gets in the way. You didn't risk everything just to sneak her back like a library book overdue by a few centuries. Besides, part of you still believes that, somehow, you'll be celebrated as a patriot, the man who brought the Mona Lisa home. There's just the tiny problem of explaining why you took her in the first place. Day by day, the reality sets in. Fencing stolen art is nothing like the stories. There are no secret societies of mustachioed millionaires or velvet-curtained auction houses. There's just you, your mounting anxiety, and the awkward fact that, despite possessing the most valuable painting in the world, you're still living off stale bread and canned sardines. So you wait. You plan, then unplan, then replan. You talk to Lisa, apologize again, and promise her that someday, somehow, she'll see Florence again, or at least daylight. Until then, you keep her under the bed, not out of cunning, but out of a total inability to figure out what in the world you're supposed to do with her next. And that, as it turns out, is how not to sell stolen art. With a heart full of hope, a head full of worry, and absolutely no clue what you're doing. Imagine living with the Mona Lisa under your bed. Every squeak in the floorboards is a potential SWAT raid. Every time you change the sheets, you're worried about smudging the Renaissance. Your daily life has become an absurd exercise in both anxiety management and accidental curation. The average person worries about bills, dinner, and maybe the occasional creaky step. You, however, start every morning with a quick check under the bed, just to make sure Lisa hasn't somehow wandered off, grown legs, or been spirited away by a team of tiny, highly trained art ninjas. She's always there, of course, nestled between a broken umbrella, some spare socks, and the single greatest unsolved mystery in modern art history. Routine household chores become exercises in museum-quality care. Dusting is no longer optional. It's an existential requirement. You sweep under the bed with the gentleness of a surgeon, apologizing to Lisa for every errant dust bunny that lands on her priceless varnish. You keep the room as tidy as possible, partly because you're now a world-class criminal but mostly because the idea of a cockroach crawling across the Mona Lisa in the middle of the night fills you with a new kind of existential dread. Laundry day is an Olympic event. You plot your moves with military precision. Sheets off. Quick glance to check she's still there. Sheets on. Every corner you tuck in, you wonder if you've accidentally bent 16th century poplar. You fantasize about asking for help. "Excuse me, could you give me a hand moving this priceless Italian masterpiece so I can vacuum?" But decide it's not worth the risk. Even the laundry soap has to be chosen carefully. You buy the unscented, just in case a stray perfume molecule dares to settle on Da Vinci's legendary layers. Lisa is the ultimate flatmate, quiet, low maintenance, and blessedly free of snoring. But her presence changes everything. Every time you invite a friend over, a rarity now, you become a master of distraction. No, don't look under the bed. That's where I keep my meditation mat. You develop new skills in small talk, rapid subject changes, and strategic rearrangement of furniture. As weeks pass, the line between hostage and houseguest blurs. You start talking to her. It begins with nervous jokes. If you see anyone with a badge, don't answer. But grows into actual conversation. On lonely evenings, you update her on world events. They're still looking for you. One guy thinks you're hiding in a soup pot. Another claims you're disguised as a nun. You wonder if she's bored or just relieved to be out of the spotlight for a while. Meals are quieter now. You eat quickly, back to the wall, ears tuned to every noise from the hallway. At night, you lie awake, rehearsing elaborate escape routes in your head. If the police barge in, do you confess? Pretend you've never seen her before? Claim it's an extremely lifelike poster? Meanwhile, you worry that Lisa is judging your taste in pajamas and late-night snacks. You begin avoiding cheese crackers in bed. Too many crumbs. Too much risk. "Sorry, Lisa," you whisper. "These are for peasants, not portraits." Occasionally, you catch yourself laughing at the absurdity of it all. There you are, a nobody in Paris, sharing a cramped room with the world's most recognizable face. You imagine her stories, 5 centuries of palaces, revolutions, adoration, and now your bedroom slippers. She has watched dynasties rise and fall, survived fires and floods, and now she's surviving your habit of dropping toast jam side down. The tension becomes your constant background music. Every day you don't get caught is a little miracle. Every knock at the door, a near heart attack. But with each sunrise, you settle a little deeper into this ridiculous routine. The Mona Lisa may be missing from the world, but she's always present in yours. Equal parts, secret, burden, and reluctant companion. And while you never asked for this kind of fame, you find yourself whispering goodnight to her each evening, half hoping she'll wink, and half terrified she'll wink back. The Louvre is frantic. Insurance companies are furious. Art lovers are distraught. The janitor is probably still trying to scrub out the outline left on the wall where Lisa used to hang. It's not every day that a museum loses its most famous painting. Inside the Louvre, chaos has replaced the usual hush. Gallery staff pace the polished floors, wringing their hands and muttering under their breath in increasingly creative French. The place that once embodied serene art appreciation now feels like the inside of a pressure cooker, with extra paperwork and a faint whiff of panic sweat. You can almost hear the collective groan as administrators realize what comes next. Red tape. Endless, looping, bureaucratic, soul-crushing red tape. Reports must be filed. More reports must be filed about the reports. Committees must be convened, and then subcommittees must be convened about the main committee's lack of actionable progress. It's a museum-wide symphony of blame assignment and checklist making. One unlucky assistant is tasked with cataloguing every painting in the building by candlelight, since half the bulbs have blown and nobody's sure who is supposed to fix them. The insurance agents arrive, black suits and briefcases snapping shut with a precision that says, "We're about to ruin your week." They ask difficult questions. Was the painting locked? Define locked. How often is security checked? Do coffee breaks count? Do you realize this is the most valuable object in Europe? Thanks for reminding us. You try not to wince as the number of zeros in the insurance claim grows longer than the list of Louvre staircases. Somewhere in the administrative wing, the museum director is having a crisis that will one day be known as the Great Louvre Meltdown. His hair, previously well managed, is now doing its best impression of a haystack in a hurricane. His phone rings non-stop, government ministers, outraged donors, nervous curators, and his mother, who saw the news in the morning paper and would just like to know if he's still employed. Meanwhile, the curators are caught between despair and damage control. One is frantically checking inventory sheets, convinced that the Venus de Milo might be next. Another insists on holding an emergency lecture about art security to an audience of exactly 3. A sleeping guard, a confused tourist, and the head of maintenance who just wanted to know where the spare mop went. No one is in the mood to listen. The janitor, however, is having the worst day of all. With the Mona Lisa gone, her spot on the wall is shockingly obvious, a pale rectangle surrounded by 5 centuries of accumulated grime. No matter how much he scrubs, the outline lingers, a ghostly reminder of both the painting and the monumental mess the museum now finds itself in. Tourists start taking pictures of the empty space, which somehow makes it worse. The janitor considers swapping careers, maybe something in cheese, or plumbing, or anywhere that doesn't require daily existential crises. Elsewhere, the museum's PR department kicks into high gear. We're confident she'll return soon, they say, for the 10th time that day, even as the headlines grow more dramatic. Masterpiece vanished. Louvre in shambles. They field questions from frantic reporters, dodging the ones about ransom notes and inside jobs. Behind closed doors, the PR team drafts contingency plans. Should they display a replica, host an art heist exhibition, sell T-shirts that say I visited the Louvre and all I got was this missing painting? By nightfall, the Louvre is both fortress and crime scene. Guards double-check doors and stare at visitors with the suspicion usually reserved for unruly cats. Museum staff swap stories about their favorite lost objects. One claims a priceless Roman vase was once taken by a pigeon. Someone else insists the Mona Lisa will return when she's ready, like a wayward cat who just needed a holiday. But beneath the panic, the paperwork, and the dust, something else is building, a shared sense of regret. Regret that the world's greatest art collection could be undone by a smock, a ladder, and a Monday morning. Regret that, for all their planning and prestige, nobody thought to lock the back door. And regret most of all that the Mona Lisa's smile, always a mystery, now seems to be laughing at them. Just a little. From wherever she's hiding. Wild tales abound. Did the Germans steal her as a prelude to World War I? Did the museum director just really need a new wall hanging? Is the Mona Lisa even real? Or was it all a clever PR stunt? Once the panic has settled into a steady background buzz, Paris does what it does best. It gossips. No sooner has the Mona Lisa vanished than everyone in the city, bakers, bartenders, bureaucrats, becomes an amateur detective, or at the very least, an enthusiastic conspiracy theorist. Forget police procedure. This is the age of the wild rumor. And absolutely no theory is too bizarre to be taken seriously for at least 15 minutes. You overhear it all at every cafe table. A serious-looking gentleman with a monocle leans over his espresso and insists that the Germans took her, obviously as a warning of what's to come. "You mark my words," he whispers. "It's an international plot." Next to him, someone else claims it was the British, desperate to spice up the National Gallery and get one over on the French. A third sips absinthe and mutters about the Russians, who simply can't stand to be left out of a good mystery. Of course, not everyone blames a foreign power. Some turn their gaze inward, convinced it was an inside job. Maybe the Louvre director, fed up with bureaucracy, decided to spice up his office with a little Renaissance charm. The man's got a big wall and very little imagination, someone argues, and it gets cold in those marble offices. Others suggest it was the janitor, eager for a promotion, or just tired of scrubbing the same outline day after day. The wildest version claims it was a disgruntled tour guide who finally snapped after the 100th question about why Lisa isn't wearing jewelry. Then there's the camp that claims the Mona Lisa was never real to begin with. Maybe she's a collective hallucination, a mass delusion born of too many art history lectures and not enough daylight. "I visited last year," says a suspiciously tan man in a straw hat, "and I swear there was nothing there but a blank space and a sign that said, 'Back in 5 minutes.'" Some say the whole thing is a clever PR stunt by the Louvre, a way to get the world's attention and boost ticket sales. Why else, after all, would they leave her in such an easy-to-swipe spot? They're probably printing T-shirts already. Someone laughs, not realizing how right they are. The rumors go global. In New York, newspapers speculate that the painting has been smuggled across the Atlantic, hidden in a crate of wine, or tucked behind a fake wall in someone's brownstone. In Italy, proud patriots hope she's been returned to her homeland, spirited away by a secret society of art-loving nationalists. Meanwhile, in London, someone claims she's been spotted in the tower, right next to the crown jewels and a very confused corgi. And then there are the theories that don't even try to make sense. Maybe the Mona Lisa left of her own accord, tired of being stared at by strangers. Perhaps she's on vacation in the south of France, sipping rosé and finally working on her tan. One letter to the editor in Le Figaro suggests that she's been kidnapped by a rival artwork. Perhaps the Venus de Milo, sick of playing second fiddle. Another posits that she's actually a very advanced automaton built by Da Vinci himself, and has simply wandered off in search of adventure. For every serious detective, there are 10 poets, pranksters, and pub philosophers, each convinced they alone know the truth. Cafes fill with arguments over who's behind it all. Theories are swapped like cigarette butts and bad jokes. Nobody agrees, but nobody wants to be left out of the fun either. The city's uncertainty becomes its own kind of entertainment, a way to distract from the uncomfortable reality that, for all their cleverness, nobody really knows anything at all. And so, Paris carries on, laughing, arguing, speculating, and adding yet another layer to the Mona Lisa's enduring mystique. If her smile was mysterious before, now it's practically cosmic. Somewhere, beneath a layer of dust and secrecy, the real Lisa waits, while the city spins story after story, trying to fill the empty space with meaning, mischief, and just a little bit of magic. French detectives have a lot of time, a lot of coffee, and very few clues. They interrogate everyone from museum guards to local dogs. At one point, they consider hypnotism. Nobody's impressed. From the moment the Mona Lisa goes missing, the Parisian police launch the sort of investigation that would make Hercule Poirot reach for his resignation letter. In theory, the best minds of the city have gathered to crack the case. In practice, it's a parade of wild guesses, increasingly desperate tactics, and enough caffeine consumption to keep the entire scene running on espresso. Picture the detectives, rumpled coats, hats at rakish angles, pockets stuffed with notepads and half-eaten pastries. They swarm the Louvre, clipboards in hand, eyes darting suspiciously from every velvet rope to every dusty window. The crime scene itself offers little except an empty patch of wall, a few stray fingerprints, and the overwhelming smell of lemon polish. They examine the hooks where the Mona Lisa once hung, discussing the angle of the dust and whether a very short thief could have used a step stool. It's as much performance as investigation, part theatre, part farce. The first order of business is to interrogate the museum staff, guards, curators, even the guy who delivers sandwiches. All are marched into stuffy rooms and peppered with questions. Where were you on Monday morning? Did you see anyone suspicious? Can you explain why there are 3 missing paperclips from the front desk? The janitor, exhausted from trying to scrub away the outline of Lisa, offers nothing but a series of long sighs. The gift shop clerk claims she was restocking postcards, which, ironically, now feature the empty wall. Everyone's a suspect, but nobody's a good one. Not content with the human suspects, detectives broaden their horizons. Maybe the thief had help from the inside, or from someone with 4 legs and a talent for subtlety. They briefly interrogate the museum cats, who respond with their usual indifference, and a local dog who, when asked to sniff out clues, falls asleep in the sundae. There's talk of checking the pigeons, but nobody is willing to get close enough. Desperate for leads, the detectives embrace every newfangled investigative method they can find. Forensics, at this point, involves squinting at muddy footprints and arguing about whether a stain is wine or just old varnish. Fingerprints are dusted, but the Louvre has so many visitors that the list of prints runs longer than the Paris phone book. At one point, an ambitious detective brings in a hypnotist, hoping to extract memories from guards who swear they saw nothing. The guards, now sleepier than ever, offer only confused stories about dreams of mustachioed men and flying portraits. The public isn't impressed. Newspapers lampoon the investigation with cartoons of detectives chasing their own shadows or interviewing a statue for clues. Cafes fill with jokes about the brilliant police force who can't find a painting that's too big to fit in anyone's coat pocket, except, of course, that's exactly what happened. Children invent games where they search for the missing Mona, usually by running in circles and making grand, sweeping gestures. Every day, the detectives meet to discuss their progress. Every day, the progress is the same, none. Their office wall is plastered with maps of Paris, lists of suspects, and a growing collection of increasingly unhelpful tips from the public. I saw a suspicious man with a mustache. So did everyone. My neighbor has a new painting. It's a landscape of cows. My aunt says the Mona Lisa is cursed and walked away on her own. File under miscellaneous. With every dead end, the investigation grows more theatrical. They stage reenactments of the crime using a bored intern and a framed portrait of a duck. They discuss whether the thief might have built a secret tunnel or disguised themselves as a statue. They debate calling in detectives from London. Then remember that the British would probably just steal the Venus de Milo while they're at it. Weeks turn to months. The Mona Lisa is still missing, and the detectives are still guessing. Paris begins to accept the absurdity of it all. The investigation is now less about finding the painting and more about finding dignity. And somewhere, in a tiny apartment, Vincenzo Perugia sips his coffee, listens to the sirens fade, and marvels that sometimes even the world's greatest detectives are really just making it up as they go along. The theft turns the Mona Lisa into an international superstar. Tourists flock to the Louvre just to stare at the empty space. Art suddenly becomes cool, and forgers everywhere rejoice. Before the heist, the Mona Lisa was just one of hundreds of masterpieces tucked away in the labyrinthine halls of the Louvre, a painting admired by connoisseurs, art students, and the occasional dawdling tourist. After the theft, she's a sensation. She's front-page news. She's the talk of every dinner party from Paris to Peoria. Suddenly, everyone who's anyone, and everyone who's no one, has an opinion about art. You wouldn't expect it, but the greatest PR campaign in history is being run by accident. The empty patch of wall where the Mona Lisa used to hang becomes the Louvre's hottest attraction. The museum, once a place for scholars and bored children, is now packed with visitors eager to take in the spectacle of nothing. People stand in line for hours just to gaze at the pale rectangle left behind. Some sigh in disappointment. Others stroke their chins thoughtfully, as if pondering the existential meaning of absence. A few even claim to see Lisa's smile lingering in the outline, as if she's haunting the plaster out of spite. Local businesses catch on fast. Bakeries start selling Mona Lisa smile pastries, basically croissants that look like they're up to something. Hat shops display wide-brimmed chapeaux with mysterious veils, for the art lover who wants to look both glamorous and slightly suspicious. Street performers dress as Da Vinci, posing for tips and handing out pamphlets on how to spot a fake. The Mona Lisa becomes a meme before anyone knows what a meme is. Everywhere you turn, her face appears, on postcards, cigarette ads, and in the windows of every novelty shop within a 10-block radius. Even the academic world isn't immune to the craze. Art professors who once lectured to half-empty rooms suddenly find themselves besieged by eager listeners. University halls are packed with people debating the true meaning of Lisa's smile. Is she amused? Smug? Just tired of standing all day? Theories multiply. The more mysterious her absence becomes, the more profound she seems. Students begin majoring in Renaissance art at record rates, convinced that someday someone will steal a Caravaggio and launch their own careers. The art market goes bananas. Forgeries flood the streets, not just of the Mona Lisa, but of anything that looks even vaguely Italian. Suddenly, everyone's a critic. Grandmothers buy Da Vinci originals at the flea market. Wealthy collectors outbid each other for the chance to own a scrap of wood that might once have been smiled at by Lisa herself. Meanwhile, forgers raise their glasses and toast to the thief, whose handiwork has sent demand for fakes soaring. In the midst of all this, real artists find themselves with new audiences. If art can be stolen and turn the world upside down, maybe art really is powerful. Painters experiment with mysterious smiles and enigmatic glances. Sculptors make busts of Lisa's head on everything from Roman columns to teapots. Even musicians get in on the act. One composer writes a Mona Lisa waltz, which is played to packed Parisian theatres, despite the fact that it's mostly just 3 notes and a lot of dramatic sighing. The government, never one to miss a bandwagon, declares an official Art Appreciation Week, encouraging citizens to visit museums and write poetry about their favorite works. Schoolchildren draw their own versions of the Mona Lisa for contests, and at least 3 students try to slip in self-portraits instead. A national art mania takes hold. No one is immune. Even the most cynical newspaper columnist admits to missing the gentle presence of La Joconde, and through it all, the Mona Lisa herself remains hidden, safely tucked under a bed in Vincenzo's tiny flat, utterly unaware that her absence is doing more for art education than a century of lectures. If she ever comes back, she'll return not as just a painting, but as a bona fide celebrity. Proof that sometimes it takes a little larceny for the world to fall in love with art all over again. After 2 years of nerves, Vincenzo finally snaps. He writes to a Florence art dealer, claiming he's got the real Mona Lisa and he wants to bring her home. Subtle as a marching band. Imagine spending 24 months in a Parisian attic with only dust, existential dread, and the most recognizable face in the world for company. Vincenzo Peruggia is now fluent in the language of paranoia. Creaks in the floorboards, distant sirens, knocks at the door that make him wish he were invisible. He has lived on tinned sardines, stale bread, and enough adrenaline to power the Eiffel Tower. But there's only so long you can live with both genius and guilt under your mattress before something snaps. Eventually, Vincenzo's patriotism outweighs his common sense. The Mona Lisa wasn't stolen for profit, he tells himself. She was stolen for Italy. She's not loot. She's a homesick masterpiece. And so, in a decision that is neither slick nor subtle, Vincenzo drafts a letter to Alfredo Geri, a respected art dealer in Florence. In the most dramatic handwriting possible, he declares that he is in possession of Leonardo's lost treasure and wishes only to see her return to the land of her birth. If this were a novel, the letter would be encrypted, passed hand to hand in shadowy alleyways. But this is Vincenzo, and he's just direct. No secret code, no invisible ink, just a note that might as well read, "Dear police, please meet me at your earliest convenience." The only thing missing is a return address and a doodle of himself waving ciao from the Paris city limits. Geri, seasoned in the ways of both art and nonsense, is skeptical. He's heard from would-be Da Vinci owners before, usually people hawking faded copies or fragments of broken frames. But Vincenzo's letter has just enough desperate honesty to pique his curiosity. The story is too wild to be ignored. Besides, what if this anxious Italian really does have the real thing? They arrange to meet in Florence. Vincenzo packs the Mona Lisa as if she's an elderly relative making her first trip out in decades. Wrapped in an old trunk, cushioned with a lifetime of nervous hopes, and maybe an old scarf or two. The journey back across the border is nail-biting but anticlimactic. No one stops him. No one asks why his luggage seems to radiate cultural significance. Either fate is feeling generous, or the customs officers are more interested in their lunch breaks. In Florence, the handoff is as awkward as you'd expect from a man who has never committed a crime more serious than jaywalking. Geri inspects the painting in a cramped hotel room. Sunlight filtering through faded curtains, dust dancing in the air like an audience of silent witnesses. His heart skips a beat. Could it really be her? The wood, the paint, the famously ambiguous smile, all present and accounted for. Geri does what any responsible Italian art lover would do. He calls Giovanni Poggi, the director of Florence's Uffizi Gallery, for backup. Together, they run every test they can think of, comparison with old photographs, expert scrutiny, the highly scientific stare at it, and hope it doesn't melt technique. It's real. It's undeniably, astonishingly, heart-poundingly real. The police are called. They arrive with the kind of excitement reserved for lost treasures and overdue library books. Vincenzo is taken into custody with all the drama of a man who knows history is about to judge him in either laurel wreaths or very awkward headlines. News of the recovery explodes across Europe. The Mona Lisa, lost and found. Italian pride swells. French officials grit their teeth and practice being gracious. For a moment, Vincenzo becomes a folk hero. La Joconde's liberator. The plucky underdog who did what no one else dared. There's talk of parades, of medals, of national holidays. For Vincenzo, it's a dizzying end to years of nerves and secrecy. Of course, the real celebration will come later, once everyone's sure she's genuine, and once the international legal tangle is sorted out. For now, Vincenzo sits in his cell, half expecting Lisa herself to turn to him and say, "Nice job, but next time, maybe just send a postcard." Italy, for a brief, bright moment, is the center of the art world. And for once, the world's most famous smile is truly home. The art dealer, sensing either profit or a prank, contacts the police. They set up a sting operation in Florence. Vincenzo, ever the optimist, walks right into it with the Mona Lisa tucked under his arm. Picture this. After years of paranoia and dust allergies in a Paris attic, you, Vincenzo Peruggia, have finally taken your shot. You believe destiny is on your side. You've penned your honest, if slightly desperate, letter. You've risked the border crossing. Now, you stroll through the heart of Florence, wrapped in the half-delirious hope that soon you'll be a national hero, maybe even the guy who finally gets a free cannoli at every cafe. But what you don't know is that, just blocks away, the Italian authorities are preparing for the kind of art world sting that would make even the French police jealous. The Florence art dealer, Alfredo Geri, has taken your letter seriously enough to phone the city's police chief, who, as luck would have it, is looking for a little glory of his own. Now, instead of a private handoff, you're about to step into a hotel room with a lot more excitement than you bargained for. Let's set the scene. It's a bright, chilly morning. Geri and Giovanni Poggi, director of the Uffizi, wait in the appointed hotel room, pretending to be just a couple of regular Florentine gentlemen, eager to see a rare bit of Italian heritage. The Mona Lisa is tucked under your arm, wrapped like a very precious loaf of bread. Every step feels like a march toward victory, or disaster, but you're banking on victory. You knock. The door opens. Inside, Geri and Poggi greet you with a mixture of polite skepticism and unbridled anticipation. "May we see her?" they ask, trying not to look like children on Christmas morning. With shaking hands and the air of a magician about to reveal the world's greatest trick, you unveil the Mona Lisa. For a moment, there's silence. The kind that happens only when history is being made, or when everyone in the room is afraid to breathe on something priceless. Poggi moves closer, examining the panel, the brushwork, the secret smile. He nods. Geri nods. They both exchange that look. Equal parts we did it, and oh no, now what? Outside, Italian detectives lurk in the corridor, pressed against the wallpaper and trying to look inconspicuous. They've practiced their best undercover faces. Newspaper with eye holes, fake coughs, pretending to tie their shoes for a suspiciously long time. They are, in short, not subtle, but you're too caught up in the moment to notice. The sign is given. The police burst in, badges flashing, voices echoing in the little hotel room. Polizia. It's not quite as dramatic as in the movies. There's no smashing of vases or diving out of windows. You, Vincenzo, freeze mid-sentence, mouth open in a half-finished explanation about patriotism, Da Vinci, and how nobody in Paris appreciates proper art security. The Mona Lisa stays put on the bed, looking more serene than anyone else in the room. It's the ultimate anticlimax. No chase, no last-minute confession. Just a man with a mustache and a dream, caught by the oldest trick in the book. Italian hospitality plus law enforcement. The police gently, almost apologetically, collect the painting, wrap her back up, and shake their heads in disbelief. They're not quite sure if they've just foiled a major international crime or been handed the world's weirdest lost and found. News spreads fast. Reporters camp outside the police station. Florentines gather in excited clusters, half proud, half amused. Geri and Poggi are celebrated for their quick thinking. The Italian police, for once, get to take the credit instead of the blame. Vincenzo, for his part, is stunned but not angry. There's relief in his eyes, his secret's out, the painting's safe, and he's still in Italy, after all. Maybe not the hero's welcome he dreamed of, but at least he's now a part of history. The Mona Lisa, as ever, is unbothered by the fuss. She's been through worse. In the end, the trap wasn't much of a trap, just a careful plan, some polite conversation, and the world's most iconic face, calmly watching as the final act of this ridiculous caper comes to a close. All that's left is the paperwork, the headlines, and a sigh of relief, especially from every museum guard in France. The news breaks. The Mona Lisa has been found in a trunk, in a cheap hotel room, with Vincenzo looking like he's about to faint. Paris rejoices, Italy shrugs, and the world collectively goes, seriously? It's not every day that the world's most famous painting turns up in such undignified circumstances. After years of speculation, wild theories, and frenzied detective work, the answer arrives with all the drama of a misplaced sock. The Mona Lisa's grand comeback isn't a high-speed chase, a daring rescue, or a shadowy art deal at midnight. It's a dusty trunk, an awkward hotel room, and a thief who looks like he needs a nap more than a lawyer. The Italian press wastes no time celebrating the return of the wayward masterpiece. La Gioconda ritorna, scream the headlines. There are processions in Florence, congratulatory telegrams from Rome, and enough tricolour bunting to redecorate half the city. Proud nationalists toast the painting's return to the homeland, and local children invent games involving daring rescues of smiling ladies from the evil clutches of the French. Meanwhile, back in Paris, the mood is part relief, part embarrassment. The Louvre staff uncorks a bottle of wine, then quietly argues about who left the door unlocked in the first place. French newspapers, previously convinced that the Mona Lisa was halfway to Brazil, are forced to print sheepish corrections. Masterpiece found in Italy. Some blame the Italians for misplacing their own heritage. Others simply sigh with Gallic resignation and decide to take a long lunch break. The phrase, c'est la vie, has never felt more appropriate. Across the channel, the British press tries to inject some dignity into the affair. The Times describes the recovery as a triumph of European cooperation, while tabloids run wild with tales of mustachioed villains and secret passages. In America, the news is greeted with bemused amusement. Editorial cartoons show the Mona Lisa rolling her eyes at the whole situation, suitcase in hand, ready for her next misadventure. Art critics, who have spent 2 years pontificating about her disappearance, now shift gears and pontificate about her return. Was this all a publicity stunt? A grand performance? Try, a tragicomic reminder of the fragility of art in the modern age? Everyone has an opinion. Some claim the painting looks even more mysterious than before. Others swear she's picked up a faint smirk of amusement at the world's expense. Then there's Vincenzo, the accidental celebrity. His mugshot makes the rounds, wide-eyed, overwhelmed, looking as if he's just realized his portrait will never hang in any museum. In Florence, he's treated as a folk hero for 5 minutes. The man who brought Lisa home, before being quietly informed that, yes, stealing art is still technically a crime. In France, he becomes the subject of jokes, cartoons, and at least one surprisingly catchy accordion song. The art world isn't sure how to feel. Some celebrate the return, others worry about security. The Louvre, scrambling for dignity, launches a wave of upgrades. Locks, guards, and enough velvet rope to fence off the entire Mediterranean. Meanwhile, conspiracy theorists grumble that it was all too easy, too convenient. Surely there must be a deeper plot, alien involvement, an inside job, or perhaps Lisa herself orchestrating her grand tour. Ordinary people, for their part, simply marvel at the absurdity of it all. Wait, she was under a bed? In a trunk? For 2 years? Children across Europe demand to know if their own beds are hiding any secret masterpieces. Families turn hotel trunks into impromptu treasure chests. Shopkeepers hang "Welcome Home" Mona Lisa signs, while also triple-checking the locks on their own doors. In the end, the world's most famous smile is back where she belongs, if a little dustier, a little wiser, and a lot more famous. The saga is over, but the legend is only just beginning. People will retell the story for generations. The time a quiet Italian painter stole the Mona Lisa, hid her under his bed, and nearly got away with it. And if you listen closely, you might hear a faint, mysterious chuckle drifting through the halls of the Louvre, a little reminder that sometimes truth really is stranger than art. Vincenzo's trial is less law and order and more comedy of errors. His defense? "I just wanted her to come home." The Italian public kind of agrees. He ends up with a hero's welcome and a jail sentence shorter than most dental cleanings. If you thought the Mona Lisa's disappearance and bizarre return were strange, just wait until you get to the court case. The Italian legal system, not exactly known for its Hollywood drama, suddenly finds itself in the international spotlight. Outside, crowds gather, waving little flags and eating gelato. Inside, the courthouse is a swirl of reporters, curious onlookers, and lawyers who can barely believe they're about to argue over the fate of the world's most famous smile. Vincenzo Perugia, the unlikely thief, is brought in looking slightly bewildered, his moustache a little droopier than usual. He's not exactly a hardened criminal. There's no menacing glare or dramatic confession. Just a nervous man in a borrowed suit who keeps glancing at the exit, as if he's still not entirely sure this isn't all a dream. His defense is simple. "I wanted to return her to Italy." That's it. No ransom, no mastermind speech, no international ring of art thieves. Just a dusty room, a tired man, and a painting that got homesick. The prosecution tries to build a case. Technically, Vincenzo broke into a world-class museum, made off with a priceless masterpiece, and triggered 2 years of international panic. On paper, it sounds impressive, like something out of a Dumas novel. In person, it's harder to take seriously. Witnesses take the stand and get sidetracked describing the Mona Lisa's smile, the musty air of Parisian boarding houses, and, at one point, the qualities of a really good espresso. It's not a courtroom drama. It's more like a slightly chaotic family gathering, where everyone has a strong opinion but nobody actually wants to see the guest of honor punished. The Italian public eats it up. Newspapers run cartoon strips showing Lisa packing her bags for Florence. Editorials debate whether art theft is a crime if it's committed for patriotic reasons. Every day, the crowd outside the courthouse swells. Street vendors sell free Vincenzo t-shirts, while children wave banners declaring him a national hero. Elderly ladies call radio shows to reminisce about the time they saw the Mona Lisa before she got famous. The trial becomes less about guilt and more about storytelling, about national pride, Renaissance glory, and the eternal question of what, exactly, makes a crime worth punishing. Vincenzo's lawyers, sensing the mood, play their part to perfection. They describe their client as a humble worker, driven by nostalgia and a sense of justice, not greed or malice. They paint a picture of a man who was simply following his heart and, perhaps, his allergies. Their closing argument is a masterpiece of sentimental rhetoric. Is it truly a crime to bring Mona home? Did our friend Vincenzo not simply do what every Italian dreams of? Restoring our greatest treasure to her rightful place? The jury, consisting mostly of men with impressive sideburns, looks moved. One wipes away a tear, possibly caused by the judge's cigar smoke. In the end, the verdict is almost an afterthought. Vincenzo is found guilty, technically, but his sentence is so light it barely registers. A few months in jail, most of it spent chatting with guards who want to hear the story one more time. Before long, he's released, cheered by the public, and forever immortalized as the man who stole the Mona Lisa and became a legend. In France, the Louvre quietly beefs up security and vows never to mention the incident again. In Italy, Vincenzo is treated to a hero's welcome, complete with a parade and possibly a lifetime supply of pasta. The Mona Lisa, of course, is returned to Paris with the fanfare befitting a celebrity, and Vincenzo, he disappears into the Paris Wethrend. History books, part folk hero, part punchline, and proof that sometimes a little mischief and a lot of luck can make you unforgettable. The trial of the century may not have changed the world, but it certainly changed the way we look at art, crime, and the power of a really good story. Lisa is returned to the Louvre with more security than the crown jewels. She's now the most famous face in art, and probably the most stared at too. Vincenzo fades into history, occasionally brought up at parties as that guy who once stole the Mona Lisa. It's hard to overstate how much things change once the Mona Lisa comes back to Paris. The Louvre, once the scene of the greatest oops in museum history, undergoes a transformation worthy of a reality show makeover. The empty rectangle on the wall is finally filled, and the painting is rehung with all the ceremony of a royal coronation. Crowds gather to catch the first glimpse. There are speeches, ribbons, and so many flashbulbs that even the winged victory of Samothrace seems to squint in confusion. But the days of casual strolls past La Joconde are over. Now, her new home is a fortress within a fortress. The museum installs a protective glass case thick enough to survive a minor meteor strike. Armed guards stand nearby, suspiciously eyeing every umbrella, backpack, and especially anyone with a mustache. Visitors are herded past in a slow-moving line, barely allowed time to snap a blurry photo before being nudged onward by the next wave of eager art pilgrims. There are ropes, alarms, velvet barriers, and a list of security protocols that grows longer with every passing year. The Mona Lisa has become less a painting and more a holy relic, an icon not just of Renaissance art, but of the world's shared ability to collectively freak out. The legend, of course, only grows. People who saw the empty space during the 2-year absence now brag about it as if they personally survived a historical siege. I was there, they insist, waving museum maps with pride. When she was gone, school children are brought to the Louvre on field trips and taught not only about Da Vinci, but about Vincenzo, the handyman with a heart and a suitcase full of patriotism. History books update their Mona Lisa sections to include a chapter on the Great Heist. TV documentaries dig up grainy photos of Vincenzo, his wild-eyed mug forever immortalized as the most stressed-out art thief in history. Meanwhile, the art world shifts. Every museum in Europe quietly upgrades its security. Locks are replaced, guards are retrained, and the world's supply of velvet rope suddenly runs short. Even the most obscure galleries start treating their dusty portraits like crown jewels. Art forgers grumble that things have gotten tougher. Tourists, on the other hand, can't get enough. The Mona Lisa's fame explodes. She appears on t-shirts, coffee mugs, and even as a cameo in cartoons. If the smile was mysterious before, now it's positively smug. Back in Italy, Vincenzo's fame burns bright for a while. He's interviewed, painted, and parodied. For a few months, he can't walk down the street without someone tipping their hat or offering a conspiratorial wink. But time, as always, moves on. The headlines fade, new scandals replace old ones, and Vincenzo returns to relative obscurity. Every so often, someone at a party will nudge a friend and whisper, See him? That's the guy who stole the Mona Lisa. Sometimes he laughs along, sometimes he just shrugs. He's already lived a lifetime's worth of nerves. Lisa, for her part, seems unchanged by her ordeal. Her smile remains exactly as it was, enigmatic, timeless, and now unbreakably famous. If anything, she seems a little more amused by the constant fuss. The line to see her never shortens. Every day, thousands of visitors try to decode her expression, unaware that she's probably just enjoying the fact that, after all these years, she still knows how to keep everyone guessing. And so, the world's most famous heist becomes the world's most famous comeback story. Security tightens, legends grow, and the Mona Lisa watches it all from behind her unbreakable shield, Queen of the Louvre, Queen of Art, and, perhaps, Queen of the world's most unlikely adventures. Her afterlife is one of constant adoration and endless security checks. As for Vincenzo, well, he'll always be a footnote in history, but what a footnote. The man who made the world fall in love with a smile all over again. Ever wondered how you ensure a priceless painting? Spoiler, you can't. But the Louvre sure tried. Meetings were held, forms were lost, and somewhere, an insurance agent had the worst Monday of their career trying to explain to Paris why the world's most famous face was now temporarily unavailable. The day after the Mona Lisa vanished, panic set in at the Louvre, but not just the nervous, art-loving kind. This was financial panic, the kind that makes accountants sweat through their waistcoats and insurance agents consider new career paths in goat farming. How do you put a price tag on a masterpiece that is, by definition, irreplaceable? How do you file a claim when the item in question is the actual Mona Lisa? It started with meetings. So many meetings. The Louvre's top administrators, insurance brokers, government ministers, and at least one man whose job was to coordinate documentation. Nobody knew what this meant, but he had impressive folders. Sat around an enormous table. There was much sighing, dramatic waving of arms, and nervous doodling on the backs of napkins. Someone suggested calling Da Vinci's estate, which, after a moment's silence, was universally agreed to be unhelpful. Paperwork multiplied. Reports needed to be filed for the Ministry of Culture, the insurance underwriters, the police, and at least 3 departments nobody could remember authorizing in the first place. The insurance policy, if you could even call it that, was a patchwork quilt of clauses, exclusions, and so many acts of God that it may as well have been written in the clouds. No one had expected the painting to actually go missing. The paperwork was meant to impress donors, not actually work. For the insurance agent assigned to the Mona Lisa, this was the day their career peaked and plummeted. All before noon, they took frantic phone calls from Paris, London, and New York, all asking the same question: so what are you going to do about it? The agent's answer, on a good day, was, we're looking into it. On a bad day, it was, does anyone have Leonardo's phone number? The actual value of the Mona Lisa was the subject of fevered debate. Some estimated millions, others billions. One ambitious underwriter, possibly after a strong drink, suggested infinity plus VAT. The newspapers had a field day. Headlines speculated about insurance payouts the size of national budgets. Meanwhile, the Louvre's finance department stared at columns of numbers, wondering if priceless counted as a deductible. The meetings spiraled on. Risk assessors inspected the empty wall and muttered about catastrophic loss. Auditors began demanding receipts for everything from cleaning supplies to velvet ropes. Somebody tried to get a discount on the museum's coffee order, just in case. Meanwhile, museum officials realized that, without the Mona Lisa, attendance might drop, donations might dry up, and the world might question whether the Louvre could keep a goldfish safe, let alone a Renaissance icon. While forms piled up, The insurance company's legal team scrambled to interpret what exactly they had promised to cover. Was theft by a disgruntled Italian patriot a named peril? What about artwork concealed in dusty Parisian apartments? At least one memo floated the idea of a partial value claim. Based on the outline left on the wall, it did not go over well. Back in the world outside the boardrooms, the general public found all this confusion oddly entertaining. Cartoons appeared in the papers. Insurance agents sprinting through the halls of the Louvre with nets, managers weeping over blank checkbooks, bewildered tourists reading "closed for claim processing" signs. People placed friendly bets on whether the payout would be more than the cost of the Eiffel Tower, or whether the Louvre would just get a coupon for one free painting of their choice. Eventually, everyone agreed to continue investigating. Insurance agents began carrying extra handkerchiefs. The Louvre started reviewing every other policy in the building, from the Venus de Milo to the janitor's mop. And through it all, the Mona Lisa, wherever she was, remained as serenely inscrutable as ever. Because, in the end, you can try to insure the world's most famous painting, but you can never quite prepare for the moment it simply strolls off the wall. Some things, it seems, are just too valuable for paperwork and far too clever for claims adjusters. So tonight, as you settle into your bed, no priceless art under your mattress, no suspicious Italian house painters hiding in your closet. Take a slow breath and remember, history is weird, people are unpredictable, and sometimes the world's most famous smile spends 2 years collecting dust bunnies in a Parisian bachelor pad. Because if the Mona Lisa heist of 1911 taught us anything, it's that the line between ordinary and absurd is razor thin. Sometimes, you're a humble handyman just doing your job. Sometimes, you're the guy who accidentally becomes the most wanted art thief in the world because you really truly believe a painting should come home, even if your plan involves hiding it next to your socks. It's easy, looking back, to laugh at the red tape, the clueless police, the parades, and the parade of forgeries that followed. But beneath it all, there's something strangely comforting. People care about art. They care so much they'll search every attic in Paris, interrogate every painter with a funny hat, and create a global manhunt just to bring a mysterious smile back to its frame. So tonight, as you drift off, no alarms, no art detectives peeking under your bed, maybe give a quiet thank you to the chaos, the comedy, and the collective effort that somehow, against all odds, puts things back where they belong. Be grateful for the little comforts, clean sheets, locked doors, and the fact that nobody is accusing you of grand larceny in your pajamas. History is a mess, but it's also proof that people are stubborn, hopeful, and, yes, gloriously ridiculous. Sleep well, dream strange, and remember, if you ever wake up to find the Mona Lisa missing, just check under your bed, then go back to sleep. Good night.